So we will continue now with the FDI flows by partner or by industry and some special cases in terms of FDI flows. But I see now there are some new people coming into the session, and if you can quickly present yourself, it will be good, and then to know what, yeah.
My name is Abdul Wahab Al-Amin from Bahrain University College of. Thank you.
I'm Lamia Amin, Marketing Manager from Al-Ma'rifa Central for Education.
Sana Hassan from Bahrain Polytechnic, tutor.
Some of the people has left and some of people that came, so this is a, So what we explained today in the morning, we are just providing the information about the components of FDI, definition of FDI. We mentioned that FDI is part of balance of payments, part of financial accounts, trying to explain the differences between FDI and portfolio investment and other investment when we discussed today. And then we spoke about the residency, the concept of residency for the balance of payments. And we went on to discuss about FDI flows, which are the components of FDI flows. We have equity participation. We have intra-company debt, so intra-company loans mainly, and you have the reinvested earnings, how they are basically reflected in the balance of payments. In addition, we spoke about the direct investor, direct investment enterprise, and fellow enterprises. There are three main players in FDI, in foreign direct investment statistics, and they are related with each other via foreign direct investment relationship. So it's a bit, we spoke today in the morning. We try to explain how the companies, how you can try to capture exactly this direct investment relationship, foreign direct investment relationship, in order then to classify exactly what is the transaction, if it is an FDI, or if it is other investment, or if it is a portfolio investment. Now we are going to discuss FDI by industry and by country. First of all, it's going to be by country, data partner. This is following up of what I mentioned to you yesterday when I explained some of the data for GCC countries. I spoke as well that we have FDI by country and FDI by industry. But yesterday it was the so-called bilateral FDI statistics. Now, the question is that the first question is how we have to make the allocation of the country. There was exactly the question of your colleague when you have basically a parent company, ultimate parent company is Saudi Arabia. You have a company in Bahrain and then another company in Oman. How, if you have a kind of transactions between fellow enterprises, how you are going to allocate the country, the investment. And you are going to allocate it to Saudi Arabia or you are going to allocate it to Bahrain. The standard for the bilateral FDI statistics, the standard is that you have to allocate according to a directional principle first. So we said that, we have discussed about directional principle, and it's going to be based on the immediate investing country. This is important. So basically, we are not allocating the investment based on the ultimate investing country, but immediate investing country. What does it mean that? So suppose that we are in Bahrain, and this Bahraini company is owned by a company in Saudi Arabia. And the company in Saudi Arabia is owned by a French company. If you have an investment from Saudi Arabia to Bahrain, you are not going to allocate the country, you are going to allocate Saudi Arabia, you are not going to allocate France. Because France is the ultimate owner. So we are not going to allocate the country, bilateral FDI statistics, by ultimate owner, but by immediate owner. There are countries like, for example, United States. United States provide information not only to the immediate investor, but as well as to ultimate investor. Yesterday, Mr. Fujita explained to you what is the difference between immediate investor and ultimate investor, and how much you have this kind of difference in the data. You know that the story is completely different if you get the investment from Luxembourg or if you get it from, because many companies, they are using these special purpose entities, for example, to pass through the investment to invest, okay? But in the bilateral FDI statistics, what we reported in our publication and what the international recommendations are, is first to provide the FDI by country, by immediate investor. However, it is as well it is advisable to provide us additional series by providing information of ultimate investor, because in fact the idea is that at the end of the day, the decision is made by the ultimate parent. So it's good that you get this information about ultimate parent. So you could have as well investment, not necessarily not only by immediate, but as well as by ultimate parent. Here is another thing which is very important, is debtor-creditor principle. You are basically providing the geographical allocation based on debtor-credit principle, which is the allocation is based on the economy of the direct investment enterprise, or direct, even if the funds are paid or received from another economy. So, you know, we are in this situation. Suppose that we have this case that I already keep repeating it. So you have a company in Saudi Arabia, a company in Bahrain. This is a direct investor, and in Bahrain is direct investment enterprise. If the company in Bahrain gets, for let's say, a loan from the company in Saudi Arabia via a third country, without creating any company, but via a third country, you still have to allocate Saudi Arabia as an investor country. You understand? Are you with me? So it's important, is the debtor-creditor principle, is not a transactor principle. So you don't get it, if you get it, for example, via Qatar, again, you have to allocate to the, where it is the economy of a direct investor, in this case is Saudi Arabia, okay? You know that FDI, as I told you that FDI, you have to, in our publication, of FDI by country, you have not only by countries, but as well as by grouping, by region. For example, we want to know what are the main investors in Bahrain. The main investors are from developed countries, or they are from developing countries. We have certain classification. So you are not doing only by country, but you have to do it as well by group of countries, by regions, in order to get a better picture of the type of investors that are investing in your country. They are from the south, they are from the emerging markets, or they are from developed countries, because this is very important. It helps you in order to capture better the policies that you are if you want to address the issues of foreign direct investment. You have to know from where the investment is coming from, because you have different investors coming from China in terms of the corporate behavior. You have different investment if it comes from other countries, from France, from Germany. So you have to basically try to see the type of investment, south-south, or you have investment from transition economies. It's important in terms of the policies in order to see it's important to give the information in terms of the geographical distribution. Of course, as I mentioned to you, there are limitations of this immediate, because sometimes the important decision-making for investment, it is the ultimate owner. So what is the point here? As I mentioned, you have an investment, quite a lot of investment coming in Bahrain from Mauritius, because many countries are using Mauritius as a kind of pass-through in order to invest. But the real investors are not in Mauritius. They are let's say, in developed countries, or they are from Malaysia. But they use this Mauritius as a base to invest in your country. Then it gives you a kind of distorted picture if you look only to immediate investor. Because in fact, they are not Mauritian investors. They are investors which are the real ones. They are coming from Malaysia, they are coming from France. And for your policies, it's important to know where are the ultimate owners. For example, you see that recently in the last 3 years, there is a surge of investment from France. But France, in your FDI statistics, you don't see France. You see, let's say, I don't know, which is the countries that might be used as a kind of pass-through. So then you need to exactly look which are the main investors and where it's coming from.
The EU operates on the basis of free mobility of capital and labor, where money can move from one country to another. Now, is this money cross-border going from France to Italy or to Germany are also counted under the foreign direct investment?
Very good point. This is an excellent point, and I will discuss in the next slide. Many investments are passing through, for example, Netherlands.
Where they have some form of free mobility of capital from one place to another.
Yeah, but a free trade agreement, it's not necessarily related with the free of capital. So. Are you speaking for bilateral investment treaties? Are you?
For the EU, if a French company invests in Italy,
Yes.
is that a foreign direct investment?
For us, yes. So we are looking, exactly. If you want to speak about that, in our report, even intra-EU, we are taking it to consider as FDI. So when we say FDI from EU, for example, we implicitly include intra-EU. We don't exclude that. You understand? In terms of statistics, we sum up the countries. So when we say FDI outflows from Italy, we include other EU countries. You understand? I understand some of the statistics because it includes this intra-EU, but we take into consideration this one.
It would be considered as FDI if the company is American company and export, okay? Or inject money to the company here in Bahrain. Yes, I think it would be considered as FDI.
Oh, yes. No, that's true. But we are discussing now about the intra. So suppose that what we discussed till now, we want. No. Yeah, but no, the idea, as far as I understood, is that we are going to write the report for GCC countries. Okay? No, I understand. But no, I'm speaking about statistically. I'm still sticking to statistics. We are going to speak about FDI flows, inflows to GCC, or FDI inflows, outflows from GCC. No, we don't. Because we want as well among themselves to report very big investment in GCC countries is taking place between GCC countries. The same thing in Europe. You have quite a lot of intra-EU, but of course it can be, when you prepare the report, it can be looked as well as GCC and rest of the world, But statistically, even when I explained yesterday, FDI to GCC, I then sum them up each country individually, But this is something, it's a valid point, and it's worth looking at. But for the moment, we have first to calculate the FDI going and coming between these GCC countries or European countries, okay?
Now, you're going to publish a report for the GCC countries, and I always tend to believe that one of the important problems that related to the GCC countries is that their economies are not highly diversified. And if we look at foreign direct investment, it's mainly in the manufacturing, in the production. Yes, there are, of course, investment invested in the primary sector that you were talking about yesterday. But if you look globally, most of the foreign direct investment are basically in the manufacturing sector. And this is probably, for the GCC countries, that's where they should opt to. because if they are looking at the future development of their countries, then it is the manufacturing sector that will be the most productive sector. You see, and that's why. But the problem with the GCC countries is that, with the exception probably of Saudi Arabia, they are very small countries. We simply mean each one of them cannot afford even to invite Toyota or GM to build a plant in this country. So that's why it will be better for the future development of these if they can pool all these resources together and they can have a joint project where they can probably be much more productive and more successful as far as FDI is concerned. No company like Toyota or GM or whatever will build a plant in Bahrain. What is the purpose? You see, but if all of them, they can probably pool all their resources together, they will be much more successful. And I think if they are looking for the future development of the region, because you see at the university we look at research. None of these countries has the infrastructure for research. But if all of them could get together, they will be probably much more productive. Yeah, in terms of, let's say, research and others.
Excellent. I think that's excellent. That's an excellent point. The idea is that that's what we are speaking about, this kind of GCC report that we would like to, by the way, this is a report that is prepared by you, in a sense that we tend to go and we would prefer that the goal of after several years of technical assistance to be to prepare a report which is prepared by different institutions of the region GCC. But it's exactly the point that small country, you know, investors, when I invest in your country, they have different motives. One of the motives is, in addition to the asset seeking, it's market seeking. So what's happened in, what we are looking now in what's happened in the last 10 years, as Mr. Fujita mentioned, is that you have a kind of switch from FDI, from developed countries to emerging, to developing countries. Basically, in 2013, 60% of FDI inflows went to developing countries. Why? Because what we have seen in the world, it's not only a kind of switch of the international production in the developing countries, but even international consumption. So these countries, I'm speaking about China, India, big emerging markets, Russia, before what's happening now, they have been very big, important countries. They have grown up, and they are basically investors are investing not anymore to these countries to export, so to re-export, to use only the assets, cheap assets to re-export, but they are investing to use the market seeking, to use the market. So the so-called, as you are teaching in the school, it's a market seeking FDI. Now, if you are a small country, how you can increase your market? You can increase by growth rate. So if you are growing in important, big numbers, then of course that you are attracting. But the second one is regional integration. That's what we are saying. So if GCC countries, they are basically increasing the regional integration process, they basically will increase their markets. So an investor coming and investing in Bahrain will serve the other countries of GCC. Similarly, the investor that goes to Saudi Arabia will serve the market of the other. So that's exactly the same point. And the GCC report, regional report, will help policymakers to basically understand what is the situation with the data among themselves. That's the idea. And then to take further steps for the regional integration process. That's correct. This is what we are for. So this is another reason for giving, this is basically another reason to show that this work is worth doing, you know, in order to improve in different central banks and national statistical office. Okay. The second point about the FDI is FDI by country and FDI by industry. In FDI by industry, the question is, if you have, let's say, aluminum industry in Kuwait, they invest in agriculture, let's say, this is hypothetical, in Saudi Arabia. From the Saudi Arabia point of view, which kind of industry do I have to allocate? Do I have to allocate to industry of a direct investment enterprise or to direct investor? So when the direct investor and direct investment enterprise have different industries, the standards are that you have to allocate based on the direct investment enterprise. You understand? So if in Bahrain you get an investment in aluminium, but the parent company, it's not aluminium, but it's another industry, in your own country, you have to allocate this to aluminium. This is straightly, this straight and forward as a logic. It's, you see, you have the activity by direct investment enterprise and activity by direct investor, but what is the suggestion is to allocate by the activity of the direct investment enterprise. Of course, for outflows, it's a bit more difficult because you basically know the activity of the direct investor. This is the one that you are surveying, not the direct investment enterprise that they are investing abroad, but still the ideal is to use the industry of direct investment enterprise. We are about to publish, I mentioned as well yesterday, we are about to publish FDI by industry for all the countries in the world. The data still are poor for all the countries. I'm not speaking for the GCC. I mean, FDI by industry, they are not complete. And we count around 120 economies, and I mentioned yesterday this out of 210 economies. And even among these 120 economies, some of them, they don't report for FDI inflows, for FDI outflows, for inward stock and outward stock. So it is important that countries improve in terms of collecting FDI statistics. And this is something that it's something that countries and central banks and National Statistics Office has to work on that in order to improve the FDI statistic on that. Finally, as you remember yesterday, I told you that some countries are able to produce FDI by industry and by partner in the same country, in the same time. You remember that yesterday I mentioned ASEAN report. ASEAN countries were able to produce how much investment they have among themselves, even in each industry. So, for example, you have, from the GCC countries, you have 10 million coming from Oman and in this sector. 5 million in this sector, 2 million in this sector, the same thing from Saudi. So if you are able to do that, this, of course, provides a richer information. There is one caveat here, that since the number of companies participating in each industry might be limited, you might have quite a lot of confidential data that we discussed yesterday, because if you have less than 3 companies, then you cannot disclose this kind of data. So this is something that even other countries, you go to United States and you just get I was once prepared a presentation for the investment of United States in Africa in agriculture, and they cover almost all the countries, but I think only 5% or 10% it is the numbers that you can see. The others were undisclosed, because you might have one company only investing in this in one country, in one industry. So there is a risk that if you go into much. So one suggestion from the guidelines is that you have to sum the industries together. So you have to create some kind of big industry. So, for example, primary sector, manufacturing, services, rather than going to individual industries, because then there you risk of not providing the information. What I mentioned to you yesterday is as well, the guidelines now is we spoke about FDI inflows, but we are interested to know what kind of investment they are investing. For example, they are investing via M&As, cross-border M&As, or via greenfield investment. This is something that the guidelines, international guidelines, are suggesting that countries to collect. This is the reason that in our survey, we are asking companies to identify if this kind of investment is equity, is M&As, or is greenfield investment. Currently, as I mentioned yesterday, we are collecting this information via private data providers. For example, Thomson Reuters is the company that captures all cross-border, all not necessarily cross-border, all the M&A in the world, they are able to capture it. So we bought this one. Maybe some of the central banks might have this access. But the problem is, as I mentioned yesterday, you are still not sure if this M&A is FDI. Because what I told you during all today and yesterday is that FDI, you have to have funds passing the border. In M&As, you are not sure. You know that a company, let's say a French company is acquiring a Bahraini company, but you don't know where the French company got the money, where the financing came in from. Suppose that they come here and get the money from the bank. Of course, it's not anymore FDI, although it might be considered as cross-border, but in terms of the FDI, it's a bit difficult. In fact, United Kingdom Office of National Statistics, they provide 2 reports every quarter. They provide a report for FDI, and they provide as well a report on cross-border M&As, which are not necessarily the case. So it's interesting to see that some countries are basically reporting that. It's important, you know, the cross-border M&As is important because if you compare cross-border M&A with greenfield, from the research point of view, cross-border M&As, you basically at the beginning change the hands. So from the economic perspective, you don't have any direct impact. Well, when it is a greenfield investment, you have a direct impact at the beginning because when you have a greenfield investment, you have new employment, you have new capital coming to the country, so there is a direct impact on the economy, greenfield investment. The point, we have studied the impact FDI and the cross-border M&As in 2000, World Investment Report 2000. It is studied the report studied carefully the relation between FDI and cross-border and how this kind of type of investment will impact the economy. But apparently, even though a cross-border M&A at the first place, you see only the change of hands, it might be the case that the efficiency of the new investors might be increased, then it will be reflected a bit later. Okay? But you might have both sides of the coin. You might have a big investor that have quite a lot of capital and try to change the structure of company, so you will have as well the impact of employment. But in a longer term, the efficiency of the company will increase and will have an impact on the economy. So the definition, the guidelines once again, is suggesting to the countries to collect FDI data, including cross-border merger and acquisition and greenfield. But do you have any? You don't collect cross-border, or you collect cross-border M&As in your country? No, not FDI inflows. I'm speaking for cross-border M&As, merger acquisitions. Does it? I see. They get this information. But no, the problem is that some of this kind of information, cross-border M&As, if you read, for example, the news, and you see that a company in the country is acquired by a foreign company, then you, as a kind of compiler, it can be used as a kind of information for you when you send the survey next time. Because you have to check if they are, you see the news, then you say, oh, now you are becoming a foreign, I want you to fill in the survey because this is the new information coming. Yeah. So that's something that the people are using when you collect FDI statistics, M&As. Well, the third one point that I'd like to mention here, and it was mentioned yesterday by Mr. Fujita, was the special purpose entities. Special purpose entities are basically legal entities which don't have any employment. They're small employment, max 5 people, but usually there is no employment at all, which are, they are called brass plate companies. In one big building in Netherlands, for example, 10th floor, you might have 15,000 companies. 15,000 companies, they are registered in this address. The Netherlands, we have basically 4 countries that are very well known for this kind of special purpose entities, which are Netherlands, Luxembourg, they are 2 both, and you have special purpose entities in Austria and in Hungary. They are not, the last 2, they are not known for having big number of special purpose entities, but they are known because they report separately. They report FDI via SPEs and excluding SPEs. And this is what we are reporting in World Investment Report. For these 4 countries, we report FDI without SPE. Now, the point is how we can treat that from the FDI point of view. Are we going to consider this FDI as a kind of normal FDI, or we are going to have a different treatment? This is important. The guidelines are providing this kind of recommendation. Countries have to collect the information on FDI with and without, but to report separately. This is quite important. So to report separately without SPE and with SPE. What basically Netherlands, Luxembourg, Austria, and Hungary are doing. Many countries, in fact, in the balance of payments 4th edition, based on the balance of payments, they begin now to report FDI excluding SPEs. For example, one biggest problem that we had in our data was Belgium. Belgium has a big volatility in their FDI. In 1 year, their FDI inflow is minus 30 billion. In the other year, it's 100 billion. So the difference is 130 billion is the same difference that we have it from 1 year to the other at the world level. So in 2012, our global FDI was 101.35 trillion. And in 2013 was 1.5, around 1.5 trillion. The difference, it was made only by one country if he is not excluding this kind of special purpose entities. Now, the definition, I would like to hear to say what you can do. I don't know if you have special purpose entities in your country. I don't see the person. She is not here? No, she is not here. From Kuwait. In your country, you don't have special purpose entities? You don't? Yeah. No offshore banking. You know, special purpose entities is not offshore banking. It's the companies that basically are built only for the purpose of reinvesting in another country, to use it as a pass-through. Huh? Yeah. No, they are basically, they are there. They don't, I mean, let's say you have it, this kind of companies you have as well in Seychelles or in Mauritius. 20,000, 40,000 companies, they are registered there, even without having any presence, you know. This is just to, yeah, the Cayman Islands, yeah, this kind of, but here you don't have this kind of, now, okay, now if you are, the guidelines is like this. If you, we have this is the scenario, if you can look at in this presentation. You have company, the country A, country B, country C, and country D. If Bahrain is country A, and it's investing to country B, as outward FDI, I said, as outward FDI, it is recommended that country to look through the non-resident SP. It means that to reallocate outward FDI from A, not to be, I mean, the transaction between A and SPE, to reallocate it with the country D. You see that? In the figure. Suppose that you have a company in Bahrain. It's investing abroad. There are two types of investment. One is investing in, let's say, in Oman. it's a normal investment. You are allocating FDI by outward FDI from Bahrain to Oman, 1 million. Another option is that Omani company first create a special purpose entity in Netherlands. And then from Netherlands, it invests in another country, either in the region or in France. The guidelines is that you, instead of giving the immediate investor, which is Netherlands, you have to invest the ultimate, which is you have to look through the SPE, France. So you have to provide France. You understood? Is that clear? So, no, it's not clear. So once again, these kind of special purpose entities, they are built in certain countries to pass through the capital. Huh? So suppose that we have, this is a company in Bahrain. The example is like this. Well, the example is like this, please. You have a company in Bahrain investing 100 million in a company S in Netherlands. Then the company in Netherlands invests 100 million in a company in Egypt. What I am suggesting to the central bank or to the National Central Information Office that collect FDI data, when you are going to allocate the FDI by partner, you don't have to allocate Netherlands as immediate investor, because what I said to you before is that you have to allocate by immediate investor, immediate destination. So you don't have to allocate the Netherlands, but you have to look through this and you have to allocate Egypt. Are you with me? Okay, that's good. That's a very good point. Many countries are using Netherlands, or they are using these SPEs, first for tax purposes. It might happen, for example, that Bahrain doesn't have bilateral investment treaties with Egypt. But Netherlands has a bilateral investment treaty with Egypt. So then he said, it's better that I invest via Netherlands in order to be better protected. This is one reason. The second one is that I would like to invest in a project in Egypt which is more than I want to invest. So it's a kind of joint project. So I'm a Bahraini company. I want to invest in a project which is 500 million. But myself, I have 100 million. You understand? So I will create an SPE in Netherlands, and then via the SPE, I will collect funds from different other sources. And then I invest in... so there are two things. First is for better protected, better tax issues, for example, in order to reduce a bit the taxes that I need to pay if I pass through the Netherlands. And third, to collect funds from other sources. I will give you an example. You know Carrefour, a big investor in a French company. Most of the transactions of Carrefour with the rest of the world they are done via an affiliate in Netherlands. So if you don't do this kind of information, the biggest investor in Netherlands is France. Well, in fact, the Carrefour goes via these special purpose entities and invests around the world, including Bahrain. You understand my point? Or this is the same logic if you are from the inward point of view. So if, for example, you are getting in Bahrain an investment from Carrefour. You know this is a French company, but apparently when you ask the company there, they say, no, my direct investor is a company in Netherlands. You don't have to allocate this investment from Netherlands. You have to allocate from the ultimate owner, which is France. Okay, in the case of Carrefour, everybody knows that it's a French company. But there are many other companies that you don't know where they are coming from, so important is to look through these SPEs in order to get a better information. Please.
I'm just thinking of the remittances, the money that's sent by workers. In some countries, they earn millions, literally, of dollars. Some of this money will end basically either buying equities in companies already there, in their own companies. So do you consider this as being a part of the foreign investment fight?
Yes. Oh, this is a very good question, not related to the SPEs, but this is related with two concepts. First of all is the residency. As we mentioned in the morning, if these migrants if, for example, we have a Bahraini that is already settled in France, or is settled in another country because of Germany, and then invests in Bahrain, it depends where is the residency of this investor. If his main activity is in Germany, then he is a foreign direct investment. You understand my point? So the residency is important. Now, the point is we have to know if these funds are coming to create a company. So if, for example, you have a Bahraini national that has been settled in Germany with a family, has his own business interest, and then he is buying equity shares in a company in Bahrain, more than 10%, this is FDI. If he transfers the money to the parents to get there, to support them, for example, what's happening in other countries, then of course it's not an FDI. It's important that you acquire equity in a company in order to be considered as an FDI. You understand my point? Yeah. It's a good point. You know that in ISIC, in industry classification, there are different industry classification. We have ISIC 3, ISIC 4, or you have NACE, which is corresponding this one. In ISIC 3 or ISIC 4, we suggest to report FDI by ISIC. There is a kind of, which is called holding companies. Holding companies, which is either 6420, sorry? It's under K, but I don't know, it's K1 or... Yeah, it's a financial intermediary, but I think it's 6820 or 7010. You know, these are two, because it's important to know exactly. We were about to discuss, to measure, for example, how to capture from a database, which is a company database, how to capture which is SPE or which is not an SPE. But there are certain conditions. You have to look basically at the holding companies, and at the holding companies you have to see if it is a parent company, it's a kind of headquarter in the terms of holding, how many people they are involved there. There is not a specific industry classification for SPEs, but they are under this kind of classification.
In relation to SPEs, are they autonomous private entities usually, or are they related to parent companies?
They are, apparently they are incorporated in the country. So basically they have assets and liabilities they report. So they are separate, yes, separate. In fact, it's interesting of these SPEs, you know, you have companies that don't have any employment, and they have tremendous assets, foreign assets and foreign liabilities, billions of dollars. So basically, you have a company in Netherlands, which has a name, whatever, and then they don't have, when they say the employment 0, or 1 or 2, and they have foreign assets and foreign liabilities that are much bigger than even biggest company. You understand? So this is one of the characteristics of SPEs. When you look at the balance sheet, if you see foreign assets, foreign liabilities, you have plenty, quite a lot in terms of value. Okay? But they report, they have to report. This, they are obliged to do that in countries. In Netherlands, for example, they are obliged to. Any other question, please? No. What the only solution that we found out is we ask the companies in the survey. When we do a survey for FDI flows, we have a question. Is your parent a special purpose entity? Now, I know what you're going to be your answer. He said, how did he know? Or if he doesn't release it, you know, because this. But the question we are asking, and it might be the case that, for example, he said, I have a liability, or I have an asset with a company which is SPE, special purpose entity. You understand? So we ask them in the survey. I mean, the new definition, it requires that in order to have an idea. And when I explain the survey, you are going to see a question that we are asking in terms exactly about these special purpose entities. Apparently, the value of special purpose entities nowadays that many people are, I mean, you know, the many initiatives in order to address the transparency of multinational companies, it's related as well to this kind of special purpose entities. So they are trying to become more transparent, and their activity is becoming to decline a bit. For example, in certain countries that I have discussed with central bank, I remember in Poland, they had, in the last 3 years, they have a big activity of special purpose entities, but now they told me that the activity has been reduced significantly because of this kind of control, and the companies are not any, I mean, they are using it. This is illegal. It's not, nothing is illegal in terms of SPE, special purpose entities, because they cannot be illegal in a country which the legal system is very advanced, like in Netherlands, for example. The problem is that for which purpose is used, this is something that needs to be looked at. But the activity has been declining in terms of the absolute value. You see, exactly, this is the slide that I mentioned to you, that SPEs are as well to collect the funds. You know, so they are not only for tax purposes, but they are trying to help the parent company to collect the funds by different sources in order to mobilize and to provide the financing for an investment in another country. Well, yesterday, Mr. Fujita explained exactly what is the round tripping, and today in the morning we discussed as well how we have plenty of companies. I told you that the biggest investor in Russia is Cyprus. In fact, it's not only the biggest investor, but even the biggest recipient of FDI in Russia. 30% of FDI inflows to Russia come from Cyprus, and 30% of outflows goes to Cyprus. So it is clearly a round tripping. Similar situation is between Hong Kong and China. Yesterday we saw in the example between Hong Kong and the British Virgin Islands, so there is quite a lot of round tripping going on. The directional principle, the good thing of directional principle is that if you apply directional principle, you can reduce this kind of round trip values. But if you report the data by asset liability, the data are inflated because you are reporting one going as an asset and one receiving as a liability. So it's in both sides, it's increased. That's the reason we are suggesting that countries continue to report FDI on directional basis. Now, finally, we have 3 cases of special cases. You know, special cases is, one is in financial intermediaries. What your colleague mentioned at MIS. These are basically transactions between financial institutions. Please keep in mind that transactions between financial institutions in terms of loans are not included in FDI. I told you in the morning that FDI has 3 components: equity part, reinvested earnings, intra-company loans or debt. Debt between banks, it's not included in FDI. It is included in other investment because they think that this is their day-to-day work. So the loans between the banks are their day-to-day, so you don't need to include them in FDI statistics. This is quite important. What about land? If you buy a land, is that an FDI or is not an FDI? The definition is that if you are buying a land, even not only land, even the building, but building together with the land, if real estate, but if you buy a land first, it has to be included in FDI, because what's happened is that what we said till now, we said in order to have an FDI, you have to create a company, which is a foreign affiliate in the country. But what's happened in the case of buying a land? You can buy the land and you don't create any company. Even though that you don't create the company, the definition suggests that FDI to be included as a kind of, it is assumed to be a kind of notional unit in a sense that you basically create the company, you have created a company by buying the land. This is something that you have to keep in mind. But one thing that I mentioned to you in the morning, it was the latest definition of balance of payment committee, that even if you are leasing the land for long term, it has to be included in FDI statistics. So even you have many countries, and I think this is very, very relevant to your country, especially for investment abroad. What's happening in Africa, especially in East Africa, is that many investors from GCC countries, they are investing in Africa, they are trying to buy the land. Of course, they don't buy the land because it's not allowed by law, but they are leasing. So this means that FDI outflows from GCC countries has to be increased. So please take into consideration that if there is a lease coming from, for example, a company from your countries investing in Africa or another country for the land, then you have to include it in FDI outflows. This is important. Well, it's a bit, well, that's true. This is a bit difficult, you know, but if you have, this is quite, I mean, especially for the small purchases, it's a bit difficult to, but if you have large purchases of big land and you get the news, of course that you have to, if you are aware, for example, that in Bahrain, Bahrain is a small country, but in a sense that if you are in a country that there is the news that a big surface is acquired by foreign companies, then of course this is a subject for you when you are going to send a survey. It's one example I read in a newspaper that in Ukraine was acquired a big surface from Chinese investors. So if I would be in the Central Bank of Ukraine or National Statistics Office collecting FDI statistics, I will get more information and I try to catch. But of course I saw that for the small things, it's a bit difficult, yeah, for small. One thing which is quite a bit difficult is what happened if you have investment in exploration of natural resources? Because you might come, you do a kind of exploration, and you end up of not getting it any kind of oil or gas, and then you go, how you are going to treat the FDI of these exploration activities, and this is basically the payments by a direct investor, how you are going to treat this kind of transactions. So it's there that expenditures on the exploration of natural resources should be included in direct investment as equity capital. So payment by a direct investor for the right to undertake a natural resource exploration in a host country, suppose in Bahrain, for example, should be recorded in the direct investment data as equity capital if there is a clear intention of establishing a direct investment enterprise in the host economy. Now, what's happened if the exploration is not successful, and then if the exploration is not successful, then you don't, of course, you don't include more further payment in BOP, and you have to make the changement in assets and liabilities of the balance of payment. So I think the changes are not anymore in the FDI flows, but it's going to be the changes in FDI stock. So what I told you that you have, suppose, investment in exploration activity. Exploration activity investment was 100 million. This 100 million, it will be added up in FDI flows. It will be added up as well in FDI stock. After 2 years, 100 million disappear. So in a sense that not disappear, but you don't find any more exploration. What's going to happen? You are not going to do anything with FDI flows. you are going to remove this 100 million from FDI stock. This is something that you have to make the respective adjustment in the FDI stock. Okay? When I speak about FDI stock, I told you that to go from FDI stock in one period to another stock in another period, you have to have transactions, FDI flow, but you have to as well market changes, exchange rates, and other changes. This is something that either changes. It's similar like, suppose that you have a foreign company in Bahrain, and unfortunately, it is burned out completely. So it is burned. It was burned. How you are going to treat this in a foreign direct investment? If the company has a value of $5 million, and today it was running properly, the next day disappeared. How you are going to reflect this in FDI statistics? You don't do anything about FDI flows, but you are going to reflect it in FDI stock. You have to reduce by the value of the company that is similar to that. Okay, so this is basically the FDI flows and the components and what we spoke. We spoke about 3 components of FDI flows. We spoke about equity, reinvested earnings, and the intra-company loans. We spoke about FDI by industry and FDI by country, and cross-border merger and acquisition and greenfield investment. And finally, we pick up certain examples that they are a bit specific in terms of data collection. So the presentation now is going to be about FDI statistics, FDI stocks. I spoke about FDI flows, and I'm going now to speak about FDI stock. They are quite similar, FDI stock with FDI flows, although there are some, of course, certain differences. But in terms of country allocation, so let me begin. We are going to speak for the second part, and I will try to finish as well the third part, which is direct investment income, in order to try to close the FDI statistics part in terms of the theoretical part. Okay, so then we have the what I'm going to speak is I'm going to speak about FDI position, valuation problem, and country allocations. The first one is about FDI stock. As I told you, FDI stock is quite important for the country. If you want to know how much is an indicator of to be used for analyzing economic and financial globalization, you have to use FDI stock. And here, for example, you can capture the extent of foreign presence in one economy or the extent of your economic presence abroad. It's quite important, FDI stock, when you want to do the analysis. I will suggest you to, when you do the analysis, it's better to use stock rather than flows if we want to capture better the presence of the country. Now, what is, here we are, how we go from FDI flows to FDI stock. So from FDI stock at one period to FDI stock at the end of a period. Suppose that we are in 2000, we are at the end of 2013, and then now we are at the end of 2014, and how we go about FDI stock. As I told you, FDI stock is about of which one? FDI stock is first is made by FDI, the current FDI stock, plus FDI transactions, or FDI flows you get in the year. And then you have other changes, financial assets, other changes in the sense that you have market changes, price changes, you have exchange rate changes, and other changes, okay? So it is, what I mentioned yesterday to you, I saw that the FDI stock in GCC countries was in an increasing trend. And of course, this was true because almost in every year, FDI inflows to GCC countries was positive. But as I mentioned, you have to take into consideration other factors, and you see that the stock of FDI might change, might be increasing or decreasing depending on the stock market. This is quite important. Now, this is an example that I wanted to show you. This is an example of United States. United States provide this information when they calculate FDI position. If you can see it in your I don't know if you can see it in your PowerPoint because it seems to be a bit, but you can see it in the, is that? Yeah, it's a bit difficult to identify. You can look at it here. So here we have, please look at the inward FDI stock, the second part. So you have inward FDI at market value in the United States. So now you have, please look at this line if you have good eyes. You have outward, let me look at the, okay, the first line is the same, is outward of FDI. Outward of FDI at market value from United States, it was 5 trillion. 5.9 trillion, okay? 5.9 trillion, it's outward FDI from the United States at market value. Out of, then how much is at the year end of 2013? It's 7 trillion. So from the end year of 2013 to year end position of 2012, you basically have a total of $1.1 trillion. Now, which is how we can separate this $1.1 trillion. This is basically the difference between position at the end of a period with a position at the year before with the current year. This 1.1 trillion is made up of this point. The first one is financial transactions. $480 billion was outward FDI stock flows from the United States. This is basically financial transactions, 408 billion. Out of this one transaction, you have, apart from this one, you have as well price changes, exchange rate changes, and changes in value and valuation. What is this? You see that the price change is even bigger than FDI outflows from the country. You understand? Did you? So here we have, in the country, you have an inflow or outflow of 400 billion. From United States abroad, there were 400 billion. But the companies in the outward, so the companies, US companies abroad, they have a price change of 775. Do you know what is this price change? Can you, maybe can you explain to me?
The value of the company and the other economies' currency value?
No, this is the value. For example, you have in Bahrain a US company. And this US company is listed in your stock market, here in Bahrain. Then this one, this value here that I mentioned you, 733 billion, is basically the changes that might this company have in your stock market. You understand my point? It's clear. So basically, the other changes, exchange rate changes and other changes are quite small for United States, if you see it. It's, well, small for United States, because we are speaking for 25 changes in valuation is 25 billion, but this was the FDI stock in GCC countries, huh? 28 billion, the whole. So we are speaking for the biggest investor in the world. But what I wanted to say is that to come from one position to the other position, please do not think that it's sum of FDI flows in order to get the stock, but you have as well price changes and market price changes, the exchange rate changes and other changes. Okay? Is that clear? Can I ask you if, or you don't have, can you tell me in inward FDI, how much is the market, the FDI changed for the price changes? So in 2013, how much was inward FDI stock in United States changed due to the price changes? 2012, this is what we are looking at. How much is inward FDI stock for inward FDI? Any number? Can you give me a number? No, 733 was for outward FDI. For inward FDI was 824. You see? You saw it, 824 is basically the changes that are related to the price change. No, sorry, so it's not 824, but it's 871. It's basically the changes that are only due to price changes. So all foreign companies in United States. No. 75? No, is that? I can. No, because this 775 is for outward FDI. This is, we are speaking for inward FDI, which is 871. Now, as you saw, what is important in the FDI stock is the valuation. In your country, in Kuwait, how do you make the FDI stock, estimation of FDI stock? Yeah. You don't know. Tomorrow you are going to make a small presentation how you collect FDI, which means FDI flows and stocks, no? Surveys? Uh-huh. Yeah, okay, CDIS is something that you provide. Yeah, you provide it to the CDIS. That's true. Oh, that's very good. But my question is, are you using market value or you are making book value? So when you have a company in a stock market, are you taking the value from the stock market or the one that they are reporting in their balance sheets? But they are reporting to you the balance sheet, booking value, book values. Okay, what is important, as I told you, in United States that are using the market value, the price changes are very big. It means that FDI stock is better to collect based on the market value. Now, of course, this is the case for United States because United States has very much developed financial markets. And many foreign companies are listed in United States in their stock market. And the same thing, US companies, they are listed abroad. So if you have a company which is listed abroad, of course you can get every time the value of the company. The problem is if you have a company that is not listed in financial markets, what you can do about it. And these are some of the methodologies of making a comparison. So basically, suppose that you have a pharmaceutical industry in Bahrain, which coming from United States, they are not listed in the stock market. Do you have a stock market in Bahrain? Yes. So suppose that this pharmaceutical industry is not listed in a stock market, and they are basically invested here 5 years ago. What you are going to do? Because you are basically getting only the balance sheet of this company, so this is the book value. And then at the end of the day, for the moment, in order to, as the beginning, what we are suggesting to the countries is to stick to the book value. If you would like to calculate based on the market value, you can compare with a similar company which is already in the stock market. Please.
It's the stock market, because once we, in our survey for the BOP, we have 4 columns as well. The beginning balance and the net transactions, and then the third one, which is the differences between the difference in the exchange rates and the, yeah. And I think that what we use is the market, yes, the market value. Yeah.
You have to mention tomorrow.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So please, you went tomorrow. Tomorrow, the representative of the central banks of the different GCC countries are going to make a short presentation. But what I'm telling you is that it's better to have a market value because you know that the value of companies is fluctuating so much if you want to calculate the stock. But it is as well important that if you don't have the capacity to do that, if they are not enlisted in the stock market, you better then stick to the book value. You know? So this is quite a developed methodology if collecting FDI based on the market value, but there are countries, for example, Canada, they begin right now to collect FDI data stock based on market value. So you have to see how, you have to collect to improve the collection of FDI data step by step. And this market value is quite advanced, but it's very important for FDI stock. It's very important. When you calculate FDI stock, it's better to see as well the valuation. There are several methodologies. Either you use traded equity or not traded equity when you are not in the stock market. Or how you can do, what are some of the methodologies of evaluating a company if it is not traded in the stock market? This is a kind of very subjective, so you have to be, first, you have to report FDI data by industry, by country, based even on the book value, and then later on you can improve about this methodology. Now here, there are several evaluation methodologies. For example, recent transaction price, prices of comparable quoted shares, market capitalization, net asset value, owned funds at book value. From the guidelines, they said it's better for you to collect FDI stock based on market value, but what is the practice is a bit difficult, so you might continue as well with the book value for the companies that are not listed in the stock market. These are the experience of some countries, and here you have countries that are basically comparing FDI. They are collecting FDI both values. United States, for example, they report FDI stock at market value and the FDI stock at book value in order to see, and the difference is huge. Huh? We saw that the United States, the FDI stock at market value is 7 trillion. FDI stock at book value might be 3 or 4. So you see, it's quite, there is a big difference among that. Well, the valuation of FDI stock, similar to FDI flows, has two components. FDI, inward FDI, equity part and debt part. What I spoke till now is about equity parts, it's shares, what I spoke now. But about debt, the debt is easy, so there is no problem of valuating a debt because debt is transacted in the market, and then you can use basically the valued and nominal terms at these current market prices for those listed in organized market. So for debt is a more easier. The most difficult is the equity part in FDI stock. The exchange rate, as you saw in the case of United States, the exchange rate changes are small, and this is basically we have been experiencing a kind of stability in exchange rate markets. But what's happening now, when you see it this year, the decline of the oil price and the decline of big currencies, you have some volatility in currencies. I am sure that it will reflect in the value of the FDI stock. You know, it's, I don't know how it is the currency in Bahrain. It has been stable, or it's pegged to the, okay, but then you have changed it with a euro, so it's pegged to the, okay, that's true. But let's say in one case, the value of the exchange rate of Russian ruble declined by 40% in 4 months. You imagine now what is going to be the impact on FDI stock if they are going to collect the FDI stock based on the market value. So the exchange rate might play quite a lot of important role. Now, what are other changes? I mentioned to you the case of exploration activities. Suppose that you are in a country and you have a foreign company and the government decides to take this company, expropriate. How you are going to reflect this in FDI statistics? Is going to be reflected in FDI flows? No. It's not going to be reflected in FDI flow. It's going to reflect in FDI stock by removing the value of this company. The second one is the reclassification, and this is quite important. You know, reclassification, what I told you is that if you have an investor coming in Bahrain and acquiring 5% or 7% of the company, central bank doesn't include this in FDI statistics because it's less than 10%. But if next year, in addition to 7%, they buy 5% more, they turn from portfolio investor to direct investor. Now, this 5%, the whole thing, you have to reclassify in the FDI stock. You understand? Are you with me? So this, once again, if you have a 5% increase in the FDI stock from 7% equity to 12%, so you have a 5% increase, you have to make a reclassification FDI stock from the portfolio investment to the FDI stock. This is another way of doing this kind of reclassification. Please. That's true, but the problem is that if you have a US company not in Bahrain, because Bahrain apparently they have a pegged exchange rate, but if they invest, you have a US company in Germany, And this US company in Germany is listed in the in German stock market. Okay? And they have the value in euros there. They don't have it in dollar. You understand? So suppose that they, the exchange rate change between euro and dollar, this will be reflected when they send, because how you are going to do the survey. But even for inflow. That's correct, that's correct, that's correct, that's correct. That's perfect, exactly, that's true. But for outward FDI, it has to be reflected. Yeah.
It would show on the stock, but on the flow side, wouldn't you also do a minus in the portfolio and a plus in the annual?
That's true. So, no, the point is this one. Suppose that in 2010, you have a $5 million investment as a portfolio investment. You have it, 5 million, you don't change it. Now, in 2014, you have another 3 million in order to increase. So now you have, instead of having, so you basically, in 2014, you have 3 million more. These 3 million, you are going to reflect in FDI flows. You understand? As FDI flows, these 3 million. Not the other one. The other one was already in portfolio. But what you have to do then is that in FDI stock, now you have basically for this project 8 billion. You know, 5 million, 8 million. Now this, you are going to remove the 5 million from portfolio. They are going to put it in the stock, in FDI. You understand? So now the stock of FDI is going to be 8 million. You understand my point? The flows is only 3 million, but the stock is going to be only 8 million because you have, due to the reclassification. And the reclassification is the previous deal, not this deal, because the current deal is FDI deal. But the previous deal, you changed, and then it's reflected. Okay? Is that clear? You understood? Okay, yeah, that's true. Country allocation is similar to what I discussed with you, FDI flows. The country of allocation is immediate investor. But what we suggest you is to look as well to ultimate one. And this is about ultimate beneficial owner. You have to be careful in terms of, as I mentioned to you, which is the main investor to you. Is that the country, for example, if you have an investment from Saudi Arabia, which is owned by a French company in France, who is the main investor? Who is taking the decision? This is something that you can get this kind of information. United States, as I told you, report by ultimate and by immediate investor. And that you get this kind of information, and the story is quite different, as Mr. Fujita explained to you yesterday. Okay, this is how the UBO is captured when you want to calculate the UBO, ultimate beneficial owner. But what I am telling you for FDI stock is quite important. What you want to take it with you, there are only two things. One, it's important to understand that FDI stock, it's not the accumulation of flows. FDI stock is flows plus market changes or price changes, exchange rate changes, and other changes. This is quite important. The second one is valuation. Valuation is quite important for FDI stock because the value of the company from 10 years to now, it changed. It has to be reflected in FDI stock. This is the presentation for FDI stock. Now I'm going to make you a presentation for FDI income. You know, during the presentations today, during the morning and today, I try to capture several topics, so sometimes you have heard about this kind of what I discussed now. So that's the reason that I'm speeding up a bit this presentation. All what I explained to you, we are going to look tomorrow at the survey, because whatever we discuss, direct investor, direct investment enterprise, fellow enterprises, the FDI relationship, FDI stock, market value, we are going to look at the survey, and then you are going to see an example there, and you are going to build up your own example on that. Finally, among the components of FDI, it's FDI income. What is the FDI income? Again, I mentioned today in the morning, is basically the profit that the company is creating in your country. You have a foreign affiliate in your country, they create profit. Now this is income coming from direct investment, and this is a part of current account. Why income is important? Because first of all, you are, as a policymaker, you are interested to know what is the fate of this income. It's going to repatriate it, or it's going to be reinvested. And of course, you know, income is as well important for the investor. Why the income is very important for the investor? When you have an investor in the country, he wants to know the rate of return. I mentioned in the morning that when I make the comparison between FDI and portfolio investment, that a rate of return is not the primary concern of an investment, but is a concern. So if an investor comes and say, I invest $2 million in this project, what is the income that I get? So you have to get this information from this income of the profit, and then the income, you have to calculate the income over the stock in order to capture the rate of return, which might be 5, 6, 7%. We'll look at it, how the rate of return is look like. Of course, I would like to mention something. The income doesn't come from your current flows, but it comes from the FDI stock. The more stock you have, the more income you have, because the more foreign affiliates have the country. It's logical. So it's not that if you are today, you have quite a lot of FDI flows, you are expecting to have today the largest FDI income. The income comes, if you have an investment 20 years, this investment is providing income every year. So this will have an impact on, so income is very much related with FDI stock rather than on FDI flows. So this is something that you have to keep in mind. Now, here is the FDI income, the structure of FDI income. You have FDI income, you have earnings in terms of equity, and you have interest on debt. So you are, for example, Bahraini company investing in Oman, and you have invested, you have a foreign affiliate in Oman, you have provided loans, and you have equity. So first you have earnings from equity, and then you have earnings from the interest that you get when you provide the loan. So both, they are basically earnings and interest. Out of the FDI income, it is estimated that at global level, you have earnings of 89%, more or less. So basically the companies are getting the earnings based on equity, and only 11% through the interest. You know, in the income, or FDI income, you can get it in the IMF balance of payments. For each country, you can get the information about FDI income, and even classified by earnings on equity, income on equity, and income on debt, and which is about the interest, you know, when you provide loans. No, it's not. No. This is a kind of a general level for the 2011, not necessarily. This is an example. And here you have, in earnings, you have reinvested earnings and distributed earnings. This is quite important. You know, when you are calculating FDI income, something is very important to keep in mind, that FDI income is very much related with the share that the foreign company has in this company. So if you want to calculate FDI income of a company, suppose that the company in Bahrain is owned only 70% by US company and 30% by a Bahraini company. Of course, when you calculate FDI income, you are going to always multiply by the 70% of the ownership. You understand? It is quite important. It's not like in activities of foreign affiliates, because when you are looking at the activities of foreign affiliates, when you are, for even this case of Bahraini that have 70% owned by US and 30% by Bahraini, the methodology is suggesting that 100% is allocated to US. You understand? So in the foreign affiliate statistics, even if you have a US company which is owned 70%, but not 100%, it doesn't matter. Everything is allocated to US. The number of employment, sales, assets, income, everything allocated to US. In the case of FDI, pay attention, the ownership matters. If, for example, you have $1 million, you get a profit in one company which is owned 70% by US company, only 700,000 is the profit that corresponds to the foreign company. And this 700,000 you have to divide by the one which is reinvested and the one which is repatriated. You understand? Are you with me? It's quite important, this one, to make a distinction. Don't allocate everything. And I have an example there that I will show you. This is the structure of the direct investment. You have the direct investment coming from the equity, as I told you, earnings on equity, earnings of reinvested earnings, and interest on debt. Here you have distributed earnings, reinvested earnings, and then interest on debt instruments. These are basically the structure of FDI income. Okay? Of course, it's a bit more complicated than that, because you have as well income of not only direct investor, direct investment enterprise, but as well direct investment enterprise to direct investor and fellow enterprises. These are more specific. What is important for you is basically to look at the direct investor and direct investment enterprise is exactly this one. Of direct investor from direct investment enterprise. So basically you have earnings on equity, as I mentioned, you have interest on debt. Earnings on equity, you have distributed earnings and reinvested earnings. Okay? This is quite the one. But one thing I wanted to tell you, and this is something that, again, you have to remember. Income is in the opposite direction with FDI flows. What does it mean that? When you have investment in the country, it's supposed that the income you are going to pay back outside. They are basically, they go in a different directions when you calculate it. So this is quite important to keep in mind. That, so the idea is that the more FDI you are going to get today, the more you are going to pay later. So because you have to pay the income, the interest when you get the loan, for example, or the equity part, you have to pay back because this is the logic. I mean, when you have the investment at home. Now, this is something again that is important in FDI income is what kind of income, what kind of earnings do we have to look at it? And the definitions, the methodology is clear. The earnings that you are going to get from income is only operated earnings. So basically, you have to have earnings of direct investment enterprise, which is, we call it COPC, which is current operating performance concept. So you have earnings, and then you have to exclude from the income, from the profit, you have to include any gains and losses arising from valuation changes, any gains and losses on plant and equipment, writing off on intangible assets, provisions of losses, any exchange rate gains and losses from trading activities. So the concept of FDI income is related with operating profit. This is something that when you calculate it, and in the survey we are going to show. So not all the income. You have a company here, they have basically, suppose that you have a US company in Bahrain, and they own land, and they rent it. It's not income that you have to calculate on FDI statistics. This is leasing, so this is something which is apart, you don't have to, it's only income related to operating profit, okay? This is something that you have to keep in mind, and when you do the survey, you have to ask the companies when you get the information. Only the operating profit. Okay, this is something that I mentioned before, which is the rationale of reinvested earnings, because income, as I said, has reinvested earnings, which is supposed to be to go outside and then to come back as FDI inflow. This is the idea that this is mentioned in this presentation, but this is the example. Now, I want you to, ideally it would be not to look at it, but now we have this scenario. We have a company from Qatar is owned 80% by a Japanese company and 10% by a foreign portfolio shareholder and 10% held by investment from Qatar. So we want to look at the balance of payments and FDI income from the Qatari point of view. The company in one quarter, they say that they pay they get a profit of 4,000. how this is going to be reflected in the balance of payments of Qatar. I told you that we have 4,000 as a profit. First thing, what we have to do? We have to divide the share corresponding to the foreign. How much is the share here? How much we said? We said 80% is owned by Japanese companies. So it means that the Japanese company have 80% of 4,000 correspond to the Japanese companies. Understand? So it's basically 80% of 4,000, 3,200 is the profit that correspond to the Japanese company. Now, we have another information there. Out of 4,000, 1,000, it is repatriated. Sorry, is distributed, what we say. Is paid as a dividend, is distributed. Which means that how much corresponds to the Japanese company? 80% of 1,000 is 800. So, out of 3,200, which is the profit correspond to the Japanese company, 800 goes abroad to Japan. So here we have, out of direct investment on equity, out of 3,200, 800 goes to Japan as dividends. Okay? If 800 goes as a dividend, it means that what remains as a part of FDI flow is 2,400. Are you with me? It's clear? So basically, you have in a direct investment income on equity, we have 800, which is repatriated as a dividend. In fact, the company paid dividend 1,000. He didn't pay 800. But in the balance of payments, we are interested only for the foreign part, not for the domestic part. You understand? So then you have basically 800 here. Now, the question is that, wait, but you told us, I told you that we have 10% of portfolio investment. Where this 10% of portfolio investment we are going to put? For portfolio investment, it's here, it's income on equity, which is, they don't pay dividends for portfolio investment. So basically, the dividends doesn't go abroad. The only thing that we pay here is portfolio investment, income on equity, which is 100. Because we have, once again, income on equity. Once again, we said, you have a portfolio investor. He has already invested. The company that he has 10% get a profit of 4,000. Out of this 4,000, 1,000 is given as a dividend. It means that 80% goes to the Japanese company. We said 800. And 100, which is 10%, go to the portfolio investment, which is exactly this portfolio investment, income on equity, which is 100. You understand? And you don't have reinvested earnings of the portfolio investment. That's the reason that it doesn't reflect any reinvested earnings under portfolio investment. Are you with me? You understand? You understand my? That's the reason that this is the distribution of income of a company that have $4,000. So if you have 4,000, once again, we have $4,000, you pay a dividend of 1,000. Now, let's take first the direct investor. This Japanese direct investors have 80%. So they have 80% of 1,000 of dividend, which is 800. So basically, this 800 goes back to Japan as a dividend. And then they have 2,400 as a reinvested earnings. Now, this 2,400, it will be not only to the debt part of the income, but is going to be as a part of reinvested earnings in FDI inflow from Japan. That's the reason that we have a credit of 2,400 in the financial account in inward FDI. You understand why we have this 2,400? Because this is the one that I mentioned to you. They cancel each other. You have in a debit part in the income, and credit part in the FDI flows, they cancel each other, the part of reinvested earnings. But 800 goes abroad. 800, which is the one that is corresponding to dividend, goes to the Japanese companies, please. No, the debit side, it might be in other components in the current accounts, but it's not clear. I mean, it's not, you don't have quite a lot of information. Definitely you have to have a balance. But it might be as well in trade, for example, in export or import. You know, you might have in other components of FDI. So I didn't give the full information, but the point is what we capture here is basically how we capture income, how we capture invested earnings. Okay? Any question for that? Any question? Okay, good. The dividends of 1,000, you have basically, you give a dividend 80% to Japanese company, which is a foreign direct investor, which is 800, okay? You have a dividends to the portfolio investor, which is 100. It's there, is this 100 here, you know? Now, the other 100 is what? Is a dividend but given to the company in Qatar, because it's local. So you don't need to respond to include it in the balance of payments.
So the total now is 3,000. So where is the rest of 1,000?
No, wait. We have 4,000 profit. We said that we have 80% corresponds to the Japanese company. So 80% is 80% of 1,000 of the dividend, 800, and 80% of 300, which is the remaining part, which is 2,400, okay? So for the Japanese, we are clear. We have 800 is a dividend and 2,400 for invested earnings. Is clear? Now, for the portfolio investment, you don't have any invested earnings, but you have only dividend. So 80% of 1,000, sorry, 10% of 100, it is here, 100 is a kind of portfolio investment income on equity. You understood? Okay. It is clear, this one? This example? Yeah, okay. As I mentioned to you again, the calculation of reinvested earnings is made basically on operating profit and losses. Once again, the formula that we have it, minus adjustment for extra items. You remove the corporate income tax. You remove the dividends paid or immediate profits, and you have basically, this is the profit that you are getting from the company. This is the 4,000 of the example that I gave it to you. Now, for this 4,000, you have multiply 4,000 with ownership of the foreign ownership. So in this case, it was 4,000 multiplied by 80%, which is 3,200. Okay, this number here is called so retained earnings was, okay, retained earnings were 4,000, out of which percentage of equity owned by direct investor, and in this is 80 multiplied by 40, which is 3,200, and then a retained one is the one that you remove after you remove the dividend paid, you know? Which was, no, we said 1,000 multiplied by 80% is 800, so 3,200 minus 800 is 2,400. This is the invested earnings. Yeah, minus 800, because this is the dividend paid to Japanese. No, because we calculate, we have 1,000 as a profit, as a dividend paid. Out of this 1,000, 80% goes to the Japanese one as a dividend. And then we said that 80% of 4,000 is 3,200. Minus 800, 2,400 is reinvested earnings. Okay? Well, how you calculate the reinvested earnings? It's a bit difficult, the reinvested earnings, but through the surveys, if you do the ITRS, it's very difficult. You don't capture it, the interbank transactions, but if you do you can do the collection by the survey and you get the information about reinvested earnings. In the survey tomorrow, I'm going to speak about how you are going to capture the invested earnings in the survey that we do. In addition to the equity part, because we gave now earnings on equity, you know, earnings of equities. When we said before is that we didn't mention anything about debt. You have as well earnings of debt. So you have different debt instruments. You have marketable securities, you have loans, you have trade credit, and the idea of calculating the interest rate is based on the accrual basis. So this is a component, it's a kind of accounting issue, and you basically interest accrued under the current period. This is the one that you are going to use when you are going to calculate the interest paid on the debt. And finally, what is the return of FDI? As I mentioned to you, you have the equity income part, and you have to divide by the FDI stock, you get the return. So this is a return is a very important in order to capture the competitiveness of the country. And in 2011, we looked very carefully in the FDI income in the world, and you see what was the return on FDI. Apparently, based on the data that we have from your central bank, and we saw that the return of FDI in Bahrain is 50%. Is the second highest in the world. Of course, this depends on the data and how it is collected in the Central Bank of Bahrain, but apparently this is the country that the second country in the world, they have the rate of return of the investment. It's quite high. But you have, I mean, you have to be careful. I mean, you don't, when we interpret this data, but what is important is that based on the available data we have, the calculation of FDI income over the FDI stock, we are going to get the 50% of investment in this kind of countries, by different type of countries. The average FDI income, rate of return for developing countries is around 9%. You have to 9%, 10%, so by different regions. Ah, voila. No, equity on income. Income, so profit. So we said FDI income. Out of FDI income, you have income on equity and income on debt. So we get only income on equity, and we divide by FDI stock. And we get the rate of return. Voila. This is the inward FDI rate of return in the world for 2011. You see how much? You said developing countries around 8.4% in the world. 8.4%. While at the global level, it's about 7%, 7.2%. These are the rate of return for the countries. Correct. Inward FDI, yes, exactly. This is the rate of the return received in the country. So for Bahrain, for example, it was 50%. Yeah, it depends on the data, but apparently it's quite a lot of FDI coming to the country and a lot of income generated by the equity. Yeah. Compared to the FDI stock. Please, what was the question? It means that they are reporting quite a lot of income. Yes, that's true. I mean, they are reporting a higher income compared to the FDI stock of the country. Of course, we have to see, because you remember yesterday we saw that Bahrain Central Bank collect only data on the financial sector. Now we have to, tomorrow, when the Central Bank of Bahrain, we could ask this question. What is the, I mean, the way how it is calculated, the FDI income and the FDI income and the FDI stock, why this kind of big, because it's quite a lot, it's very high, in fact, it's quite high. Book value, that's very good, fair enough. You know, there are two issues, exactly, and it's very good that you picked up, because it's basically what we discussed. It's about the valuation of FDI stock, but in addition, we have to see, I mean, it might be the case that the income, apparently the income that generated by the foreign companies here is quite high. So the policymakers has to make sure that most of this income will be kept in the country rather than going abroad. Okay? So this is basically the presentation. Both stock and income, I browsed through a bit quickly, because otherwise tomorrow would be difficult. Tomorrow we are going to have a high official from Bahrain in one period of time in order to discuss the way forward. So that's the reason I try to squeeze it. But you know, I would appreciate if we can, don't close it now, but we continue with the last presentation. It's going to be short. Is that fine with you? please, because I don't want to leave it to not to, and this is not about the collection of FDI statistics, but it's about the activities of foreign affiliates. I don't know, can you check if the professor is upset or he already has left? Because apparently he keeps asking all the time about impact, and we are going to discuss about these variables. As I told you, all the discussion that we have had today and yesterday was about the impact on the economy, and it makes sense. You know, this is a presentation number 10. I skipped 8, 9, and then, no, I skipped 9. I just finished 8, and then we go to the 10. It is good for you to at least to have an idea what we are speaking about. Did any one of you has heard about FATS statistics? FATS. FATS, it's basically foreign affiliates statistics. I mentioned yesterday, but you haven't heard it. FATS statistics is very well known in Eurostat and Eurocountry. You just Google in the internet FATS, F-A-T-S, and you are going to get quite a lot of information in Eurostat. Eurostat provides information about activities of foreign affiliates in the world, European foreign affiliates. So, when we get in Bahrain or in Qatar or in Kuwait $1 million or $2 or $10 billion of FDI, we get this, but we don't know the use of FDI. This was the question that your colleague mentioned, that if this profit, we can reinvest it for building schools. We don't know that. That's a problem. Activities of foreign affiliates provide this information. This is quite important. So, the presentation is going to be about the data on activities of TNCs. You know, TNCs, we call it transnational corporations. Either we call it transnational corporation or we call it multinational corporations. So, we are going to speak about the activities of TNCs, which is FATS. What is the manual on statistics of international trading services? Did you have dealt with the trading services yourself? No. No. Any experience with trading services? No. There is a manual. What I told you today is the BPM6 manual or balance benchmark definition of OECD. These are manuals for FDI. In addition to these two manuals, you have as well another manual which is for trading services statistics. And out of the different chapters of trading services, there is only one chapter which is dealing with the foreign affiliate statistics. It's very important because we need to basically capture the foreign presence, you know, mode 3 of GATS. It's basically the mode 3 is foreign presence of foreign affiliates. Okay. What are the activities of transnational corporation? There are statistics on operation of TNCs. Then I'm going to speak about international recommendation and main concepts and definition. Here is, if you can look at it, here we are, suppose that we are here in Bahrain. This part, reporting economy. You have, first of all, foreign affiliates. So foreign affiliates in Bahrain, which are owned by a parent company somewhere. So suppose that this is Bahrain, and this is Saudi Arabia or other economies. So this here, in this reporting economy in Bahrain, we have first foreign affiliates. Second, we have domestic affiliates, of course. We have Bahraini economies. And the third one, we have parent companies. You see, parent companies that are Bahraini companies that are investing abroad. You have three types of group of activities. What we are going to discuss now, what I'm speaking about FATS, is only about this one, foreign affiliates in the country. So how much, what we want is basically what is the activity of foreign affiliates in the country. This is FATS, foreign affiliates. We have two types of foreign affiliate statistics. You know, what I told you, this is, when we speak about foreign affiliates here, it's inward FATS. When we are speaking about parent firms, this is outward FATS. You know? So we are going to speak, basically, if you look at the Eurostat, you are, again, inward fast and outward fast. They are two different data sets. Why we are interested to know that? Of course we are interested. If I would be a policymaker, I would basically ask, if I want to get a better policies, I will ask the EDB and I tell them, can you tell me what is the major impact of foreign investors in the country? And you are going, if you have this kind of data, you are going to say, wow, we have an investment in this aluminum sector, for example. This is very important. 40% of the employment in this sector comes from this foreign affiliate. We have to give more attention to this investor, you know, because it's creating an impact on the economy. Or what is this company has a big share on exports from the country. So all these kind of factors, the policymakers has to be aware of. In addition to the numbers on FDI flow, because if I get an information from that the biggest investor in my country, let's say is Saudi Arabia or UAE, and that what? Unless I have a more detailed information about the impact of the country. You understand? No. In the world, we are estimating, and we have, you have it in the World Investment Report, there are around 100,000 foreign affiliates in the world. 100,000 foreign affiliates. I don't know how much they are in Bahrain. If you can give me any, or in your country, how many foreign affiliates you have in your country? You don't have any. It might be 200, 300, 400, or there are more? Huh? There are more. Because you are doing the survey, so at least you have a kind of similar. The same thing might be more in how much foreign affiliates there are? Foreign affiliates in Saudi Arabia. 15,000. I see. Okay. So we are basically at the global level. You have around 100,000 companies, and they are around. I think that it might be bigger. You know, I think it's bigger one. This is 89,000 are parent companies, and there are around 900,000 or 1 million foreign affiliates around the world. That's something that a number is missing. But if you look at the foreign affiliates in 2013, we are estimating that there are around 71 million people around the world that are employed in foreign affiliates. This is an estimation, please. No, they can have domestic partners, yes. They can have domestic partners, but usually in the foreign affiliate statistics, and I'm going to speak about it, is the one that have the majority, more than 50%. But they might have a minority which is domestic one. This could be 100%, yes. So in the world, we have foreign affiliates which have a number of employees of 71 million. You have total sales of 35 trillion. You have exports of 8 trillion. And we have estimation assets of 97 trillion. You see what is the difference with the previous, with 1990. There is a big jump. You know, in 1990, we are estimating that there were 21 million people working for foreign affiliates. So it's more than 3 times. There is an increase in a period of 23 years. Huh? The same thing is sales have been jumped for 7 times more, from 5 million to 35 million. This is basically international production at the global level. Of course, this is an estimation. This is estimation because we are not able to, many countries, they are not reporting this data. For example, in GCC countries, you don't have, no country is reporting activities of foreign affiliates. We have to make the estimation based on the data we get from developed countries. So, as I mentioned to you, why we are interested to measure the activities of foreign affiliates in the country. There are certain factors that are mentioned there. They are the statistics on operational affiliates in the host country, measure the impact on the labor market. You want to compare it with a domestic company, how much employment has been created by the foreign affiliates. You want to measure the transfer of technology or the research and development, R&D. You want to measure international trade. You want to measure economic efficiency and competition. All this kind of information, you can get it from the FAST statistics, from the foreign affiliate statistics. Okay, this is the manual that I mentioned to you. This is the Manual on Statistics on International Trade and Trade in Services. This is a manual which is done by different international organizations, United Nations Statistical Office, European Commission, OECD, IMF, UNCTAD, WTO. These are institutions that are preparing this manual. And in 2010, the manual was updated with the second, so you can have it free. I mean, this is in a web, you can download it. It's the second edition. It's, and based on this one, the guidelines of collecting FDI statistics are basically in chapter 4 of this manual on statistics on international trade and services. This associate, subsidiary, and branch I spoke today in the morning. This is important. When you are collecting FDI data in your country, are you doing the survey at which level? Are you sending the survey to the establishment or to the enterprises or to the group of enterprises?
No, to the group of enterprises.
I see, because they are producing consolidated balance sheet. To prevent, okay, so in the case of UAE, they are sending the survey to the group of enterprises in order to prevent the duplication and to get the consolidated version. Now, but you don't know, I mean, the definition is that when you are numbering the number of foreign affiliates in Bahrain, suppose that you have one big company, US company in Bahrain, that have several establishments. Are you going to count the establishment, or are you going to count only the enterprise? This is something that you have to look at it, and what is the guidelines are suggesting when to calculate the activities of foreign affiliates. Is anybody from statistical office here? From statistical office in Bahrain? Or is yours? You are a statistical. Are you doing a business survey in Bahrain? You are doing it. So you know the number of companies, and you have this kind of information.
Establishments primarily, yes.
I see. So you see, we are speaking for two different groups of economies. Here we saw about FDI. The survey it was sent to group of enterprises. You are dealing with established, but you are already have prepared this kind of data, FATS data, or no? I see. Okay. But one question, so if you have the information of the business survey, did you have tried, no, I'm not speaking for FDI now, I'm speaking for this one. Did you have tried to make a kind of distinction between foreign affiliates and domestic one? No. Because this kind of information that many countries in the world, they already collect the information on activities of foreign affiliates, but since they don't know, they are not able to make a distinction between foreign affiliates and domestic one. So they have the information for the whole companies in the country. If they are able to make this distinction, this will be quite important for the study. So many countries are collecting business surveys in their own country for the whole companies, but they are not making this kind of distinction, so it's important if this kind of distinction is made. Very easily, statistical office can provide the information of FATS for in Bahrain. Okay? The questions that we are going to answer about the companies that are present in, when you calculate the activities of foreign affiliates, they are the following. The first one is, what is the universe of firms to be covered? What is the universe of firms? The second one is, how the data are to be grouped, what are the variables to be covered, and how might the statistics be developed? Okay, ownership criteria. What was the ownership criteria for FDI statistics? At least 10%. You remember. Yesterday and today we said FDI is linked with a 10% threshold. In the case of FAT statistics, it is 50%. It's not 10%. So if you want to do a kind of activities of foreign affiliates, you have to look only to 50% and more. Keep in mind, so the difference between FATS data and FDI data, this is one is 10%, the other is 50%. Now, what we are suggesting to the countries and what United States is doing, they are collecting this type of data not only to 50%, but as well as 10%. But they are able to separate it. So here, for example, here, this is an example. Sorry. This is an example of United States by what is the number of affiliates. Apparently, in United States, there are 27,000 companies, foreign companies in the country, out of which 26 are majority affiliates, more than 50%, and only 1,598 are companies which are minority owned. Okay? So the United States is collecting FDI, activities of foreign affiliates, very much developed. It's the only country, the country that have quite a lot of information about activities of multinationals. You have a number of foreign affiliates. So this is basically what central bank, a national statistical office might produce. They have basically how much foreign affiliates, 2,000, 3,000, or maybe in Saudi Arabia, which is 1,500. And then you have the number of, and then you can see the total assets. How much is the total assets? Which is total assets of United States is 23 trillion, total assets of United States. Then you have sales, 6 trillion. This is 23 billion. No, it's a 23 trillion, yes, because there are only millions. Then you have compensation of employees, you have number of employees. Apparently, in United States, 14 million people are employed in foreign affiliates in the United States. This is the information that is provided from the Bureau of Economic Analysis in the United States. So you understood that the target, the group of economies is, of TNCs you have to target is 50%, but it's better, it is advisable that you can include 10% and more. So not only majority owned, but as well minority, as it was done, minority owned affiliates, that is done in the United States. The type of producers in the activity of foreign affiliates, it was meant to be before only for services, but now the new guidelines is for goods and services. So you are going to look at all the producers, goods and services. And in addition, the statistical unit, as we discussed, you are looking at the group of enterprises. The statistical office of Bahrain is collecting the business survey at the establishment. Here, the suggestion is that either at enterprise level or at the establishment or individual business units. Okay? Now, there are only two or three more slides and we finish, is how we attribute FATS variables. It is quite important, the attribution of FATS variables. What I told you for income before, do you remember what I told you for income? What was the importance for income? The ownership share. If you have 4,000 as a profit, you have to multiply by 80% in order to get the income which corresponds to the foreign country. It is not the case now. Now everything in the case of activities of foreign affiliates, the winner take it all. So if you have a company which is 70% owned by the United States, all the variables are attributed to the United States. You understand? No, because I told you that if you have this company that have 4,000 profit, income, it was 4,000. Before, in FDI income, you have to attribute only 80% because it was owned by 80%. In the case of activities, income is 4,000 of foreign affiliates. No, it matters, but no, in terms of income first. When you get the income, when you allocate the income to foreign affiliates, it's not 80% multiplied by 4,000, 3,200, but it's 4,000. And we call this income Japanese income. So this type of investment, this allocation is contributed at a whole to the Japan. So if suppose that we have the same example and the company has 1,000 people. You know, if you have 1,000 people in this company, you are not going to say 800 are Japanese, and 200 are, let's say, 100 are foreign portfolio and 100 are domestic. No, you are going to say 1,000 goes to the Japanese. It corresponds, it allocates to Japan. You understand? So it's just allocation, it is to one country. You cannot split it. You understand my point? This is something that is different from FDI statistics. This is basically, in the activities, it's different. It's basically everything, the winner take it all. Huh? This is the idea. But the problem is, one question is, what about a company that is 50%, 50%? Yeah. Now, still, we have to be careful. If this 50%, it is owned once by a government, and one by a foreign company, it is domestic owned. One. So if it is 50%, and the 50%, 150 is owned by a government entity, it corresponds to the government entity. You know, this is one definition. But if, for example, you have two companies which are split, you cannot do it anything, you can split it then. For example, if you have a company which is 50% French, 50% German, then finally you can allocate, for example, the employment here, but it's very rare. So the idea is that everything you have to allocate to one country. It's the same thing, the fast variables, they are going to be allocated to their entirety to the country, you know, to the entirety of the variable. So I mentioned to you income. Income is going to be allocated everything to Japan, or assets, everything to Japan, although the company is basically owned only 80% or 70%. This is something that you have to by economic activity, the ideal would be possible to allocate fast on the basis of industry of producers. Okay, you know how we are going. Suppose that you have a company in Bahrain. What is interesting is what is the basic is what is the industry of the producer. When you have so the industry, what is important is to get the industry activity of the producer. We are in the activities of foreign affiliates. Don't think for FDI. You have to think for your own country. So you want to see what kind of activity is produced in your country in order to, this is the industrial classification that you have to do it. Huh? This is something, again, that you have to keep in mind. Okay, FATS activities has to be allocated like ISIC, as we said, for FDI, so it's the same thing, ISIC 4 or ISIC 3 or ISIC 4. It's not. Now, which are the variables, finally? So this is basically the last slide or two slides. Which are the variables that we have to look at it? And here we have sales, output, imports, employment, value-added, exports, number of enterprises, assets, all these variables, You know, these variables, once again, they are the variables that are allocated to the company independent of the ownership. It must be more than 50%. You understand? So if you are going to look at it and say, how much number of employees I have of German companies in Bahrain? There are 10,000. Here you have to take a kind of approximation because 10,000 might include as well the shares that are of domestic companies. You understand my point? Because we said that they are all 1,000. 1,000 people are working in German foreign affiliates in Bahrain. But here we are including all the foreign affiliates which are more than 50% German. You understood? Well, this is something that I repeated several times. These are the variables. The main variables is sales, output, imports, employment, value-added, exports, and number of enterprises. United States has the best data. They provide this kind of information even by country and by industry. It's very, very detailed about that. Tomorrow in the survey, at the last part of the survey, we are trying to put together the activities of foreign affiliates with FDI statistics. Although it's a bit difficult because FDI statistics is collected by central bank. Activities of foreign affiliates is collected by statistical office. So it's a bit difficult to match these two, but we are proposing that when you do the FDI survey, include as well information about these variables. Pay attention because some of the countries, in fact many countries, they have this kind of information that I explained to you, but this information is buried into the business survey. So they have, but the only thing that you have to give, if you give to statistical office the list of foreign companies in the country, and you tell him, can you tell me the numbers? He's going to give you, you have basically the FATS numbers.
Whether these companies are residents or they're foreign affiliates, whether they're residents or foreign affiliates, that's the distinct, because you do have classification by nationality.
No, that's the point. You don't
Yeah, but you don't have by ownership. That's the problem.
This is a big problem. So you don't need by nationality, but you have to have you have to classify by the ownership in order to get this one. Well, these are the definition of how we calculate the variables, which is sales, employment, value added, number of enterprises, and then you have the sales of turnover. You know, for example, in employment, how much employment? Suppose that you have a company that have people that are working 50%. What is the definition here is that you have basically to count the people on 100% basis. So if you have people that are working 50%, you have to pay 2 people in order to say that as basically they are one person employed. You know, allocation, you don't, short term, in order to remove this kind of seasonality, you have to remove it when you calculate it. So there are certain employment you have to convert in a full time. So if you have 250%, you have 1 full time. You understand? So there is a need for conversion when you say how many people they are employed. It's a quite developed as a kind of statistical. And by the way, European Union countries, they are obliged by the EC, by European Parliament directives to prepare this kind of information. If you go to the internet, you look at inward FATS and outward FATS, they are, by country, they are reporting for each country all this kind of employment, sales, and assets, I think. These are the 3 variables that are reporting very. We are planning to report in the FDI statistics in our database FATS data as well for the available countries. Until now, around the world, there are only 40 countries reporting. 40 out of 210. So that's something that this is a work that needs to be done with other countries just to push them to collect not only FDI data, but as well that activities of foreign FATS data. Okay, now this is basically how you are going to do it. You are going to do surveys, and I mentioned to you that the survey we link together with FDI statistics. This is what we propose. But you have to do the survey of parents, survey of foreign affiliates, but still, I think that many countries may use the business survey that they have. It's very important that they can split the companies on foreign-owned and the domestic one. More or less, this is this is the compilation of FATS data. It's basically either administrative sources or you can do the surveys. And one thing that we are going to suggest, and tomorrow we are going to suggest in the survey, to add FATS variables to FDI statistics. This is one kind of shortcut in order for the countries that don't report at all. You don't know, for example, how many companies are in different countries. They don't have any clue about that, or at least they don't report it. So finally, it was a bit short, but I have to tell you that otherwise tomorrow it will be very difficult to make this presentation. The idea of activities of foreign affiliates is just to measure the impact. We are trying ourselves to do did you have heard, by the way, any database which is called Orbis? Any Orbis or Amadeus? No, you haven't heard. Orbis and Amadeus, they are companies that are collecting information for all companies in the world. They have 9 million companies around the world. They have the information, Orbis and Amadeus. What we do, we're trying to get out of these databases information for foreign affiliates in different countries. For example, how many foreign affiliates they are reported in Bahrain or in Qatar or in Kuwait. Of course, that the information is still not complete because it's 9 million. It's very difficult to capture, but at least this is a kind of micro approach to the data. And then we are going to come up in a website, on an UNCTAD website. We are going to publish the name, number of companies, foreign companies in the country and foreign parents in the country. This is approximation, but based on these databases, we are going to publish the number of parents and number of foreign affiliates. It's quite important for the researchers. It's quite important because they need to get information. But once again, you don't have many countries that report that. Okay, with this presentation, we close today the full day presentation about FDI statistics. I spoke about FDI as a part of balance of payments. I spoke about FDI flows, FDI stock, FDI income, and at the end I spoke about activities of foreign affiliates. The only presentation that remains without mention, and maybe tomorrow if we have an opportunity I can speak to you about, this is half an hour, it's about the way how you collect FDI data, which are either the survey or the ITRS, International Bank Transaction System, or administrative sources, and what are the pros and cons and on these three different types. But tomorrow, in the morning, we are going to hear what your colleagues are doing in collecting FDI statistics. And then we are going to have a kind of way forward, how we are going to go forward in terms of improving FDI statistics in the GCC countries. And then we're going to speak about survey. Survey is going to be a repetition what I mentioned today. Okay? So thank you very much. Bye-bye.